Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Sotita Sukashishi Mara Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON DVD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Sotita Sukashishi Mara Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Gaudi Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giridhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Brihat Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, Text number 12. Bhattariyapatoram, Bhattariyaptoruman. I'm just looking at this for the first time, you have to excuse me. Bhattariyaptorumananam. Bhattariyaptorumananam. Lokan avishyate yashaha. Lokan avishyate yashaha. Patir bhavad vido yasam. Patir bhavad vido yasam. Prajaya nanujayate. Prajaya nanujayate. Bhattariyaptoru mananam. Let's try it one more time. Bhattariyaptoru mananam. Lokan avishyate yashaha. Patir bhavad vido yasam. Prajaya nanujayate. Vaishnavis. Okay. Bhartari, by the husband. Apta urumananam, of those who are beloved. Lokan, in the world. Avisate, spreads. Yashaha, fame. Pati, husband. Bhavat vidaha, like your good self. Yasam, of those whose. Prayaja, by children. Nanu, certainly. Jayate, expands. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband, and a husband like you will become famous by having children, because you are meant for the expansion of living entities. Purport. According to Rishabdev, one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. Human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of this human form of life. And the father, like Kashyapa Muni, is supposed to beget good children for the purpose of liberation. Om Gananta Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. So we're hearing a particular situation being described here, how Diti, she's wanting to have children like some of her co-wives, and she's approaching her husband Kashyapa Muni and encouraging him to facilitate that, but unfortunately she's kind of being a bit impatient. She's doing it at a wrong time, and so we're hearing, that's the general story, and we've kind of heard that described in some classes. And but so in this purport, Prabhupada, that's touched upon that aspect of the story. But there's a very important message embedded in this purport here, and I think it's this: human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of this human form of life. That's the message. That's the really overarching and important message that we're hearing today. So in the Vedanta Sutra it says, Atato Brahma Gigyasa. Let's confirm what Prabhupada says here in the Vedanta Sutra. Atato Brahma Gigyasa, which means now in this human form of life, this is the time to inquire about Brahman. It's the time to do exactly what Prabhupada's saying here in the purport. Try to understand, you take the opportunity to understand about the miseries of material life, birth, death, old, and disease. Try to understand who we really are and what we're meant to do, in this human form of life. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 16, beginning with text 16, Krishna talks about people who come to devotional service, people who move in that direction. And he says, Chatur vidha bhajante mam jnana sukritina artarti, Arjuna, artarti gigyasur jnanicha padatarshava. So he explains to Arjuna that there's 4 types of people who approach me. And they are the distressed, those who are desiring an improvement in their material situation, wealth, the inquisitive or curious, and those who are seeking knowledge of the absolute truth. Those are the 4 categories of people that approach Krishna. And then he goes on to explain that of those 4 categories, the best is the jnani, one who's seeking wisdom and enlightenment. Because the others, like the distressed, when somebody approaches Krishna for mitigation of distress, and when the distress is gone, then okay, they lost their motivation. See you later, Krishna. back to my previous program. The same thing with those who are seeking wealth and the curious. When their curiosity is satisfied, or when they get their improvement in their economic situation, then the risk is there that they'll just lose interest in Krishna and they just go back to trying to enjoy in the material world. But the jnani, he's interested, as I said, in he's acquiring wisdom and enlightenment. Actually, the other day I was looking up in the dictionary the definition of philosopher, and there was several definitions, but one of those definitions was a philosopher is somebody who's seeking wisdom and enlightenment. Okay? So that was interesting. That's a jnani. A jnani is a philosopher. He's seeking wisdom and enlightenment. And when you think about it, you can understand that those are, objectives worth pursuing. So, then Krishna goes on to say, he says, Tesham jnani nityayukta eka bhakti vashishyate aham hi jnanino tyartam aham chasa mama priya and udara sarva evaiti jnani twatma vame matam ashtito hi sayuktatma mam evanutamam gatim. So the translations for those is, of these, referring to the 4 types of people who approach him, he says, the one who is in full knowledge, who is always engaged in pure devotional service, is the best. For I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. That's important. We'll make note of that. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So, Krishna's, pointing out there that they're all magnanimous souls, but it's good. We should try to come to that platform of being like somebody who's seeking the transcendental goal, spiritual realization, as opposed to just some improvement in the material situation. Let's see what my thought is. Trying to get my train of thought here. So, yeah, we should cultivate that. We should be striving for, Prabhupada actually said that one of his objectives in establishing the Krishna consciousness movement was he wanted to create a society of Brahmins. He wanted everybody to come to Krishna consciousness at some level or another, but he did want a society of Brahmins, because Prabhupada would say in his purports and sometimes in his talks that if even 1% of the population became in the mode of goodness, that's Brahmin, okay? If even 1% of the population became Brahmin, mode of goodness, then the entire human society would be changed. You don't need 50% or anything like that, just 1%. See, so it's very important that as devotees, that's why Prabhupada also encouraged and emphasized how important it was for us to read his books, because in this way we become absorbed in the philosophy, and we're gravitating, moving towards that Brahminical qualification, becoming Brahminical. But everybody else it's also good, whatever whatever way you can kind of connect with Krishna, that's good. But both Prabhupada and Krishna here, we could see, are clearly pointing out that ideally we should strive for that. So in the process of, trying to become Brahminical, we hear the philosophy, we learn so many things, and, so many different philosophical points. We learn we're not the body, we're spirit soul, we learn that we're part and parcel of Krishna, we're the eternal servants of Krishna, etc., etc., etc. And one thing we learn, which is expressed very nicely by Sutta Goswami in the second chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Atakpum birdrija shreshta varnashrama vibhagasha svanustitasya dharmasha samsidhir haritosana. So Sutta Goswami explains that the perfection of everything you're doing, whatever, it doesn't matter whichever varna you're in or ashram you're in, it's just to samsidhir haritosana, is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so he's putting that as the samsidhir, which means the highest perfection is haritosana, to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, Krishna. So where did he get that from? Where did he get that idea from? Well, Sutta Goswami, who's his spiritual master? Sutta Goswami. Who's Sutta Goswami's spiritual master? Sorry? Yes, Sukadev Goswami. How is that? How is Sukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami's spiritual master? What was the describe? Correct. Yeah, he was there. Sutta Goswami was there. He heard Sukadev Goswami narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. And he did a good job of hearing it, and that's something he came away with. There's that expression, like father, like son. Okay? So where did he get it from? He got it from Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami, in the second canto, fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's offering prayers at one point. The chapter is called The Process of Creation. He's offering prayers. So I'm going to read four of the prayers that he offers at that. He says, this is Sukadev Goswami speaking. He says, referring to Krishna, he says, he is the super soul and the supreme Lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures, and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Shiva and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered with awe and veneration, may that supreme absolute be pleased with me. That's one. Next one. May Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Andaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices, and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. It is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who gives liberation. By thinking of his lotus feet at every second, following in the footsteps of authorities, the devotee in trance can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May that Lord be pleased with me. Since he's very conscious, he's repeating this. And this is the last one. May the Lord, who is in the beginning of the creation, amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. See, so he's very conscious of that, how important it is. He's praying, I want the Supreme Personality of Godhead be pleased with me. And we just heard it. He repeated it in 4 successive shlokas there. So that is a very high understanding in Krishna conscious philosophy. That samsidhir haritoshanam, that bhagavat prasiditam, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead be pleased with us. And now, what Sukadev Goswami was thinking when he was praying like that, I don't know. But I know if I'm praying like that, if I'm praying, Krishna, I just want that you be pleased with me, I have to admit, what's going on in my mind at the same time is, I want that Krishna to be pleased with me, because if Krishna's pleased with me, then my life's going to be better. It's going to be good for me. And as I want Krishna to be pleased with me, because that's going to be good for me. I'm going to be happy, or I'm going to be more successful, or whatever. And that's good. That's a good mentality. That's a pretty high, good working mentality to have. But there is something beyond that. There is something beyond that. There is a stage of devotional service where the devotee is desiring that Krishna be pleased and is not even concerned. This is the highest, actually, and is not even concerned whether they are benefited by it or not. And that was manifested by the gopis of Vrindavan. They manifested this highest stage of devotional consciousness. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from a lecture Prabhupada gave, where he spoke about this. He says, this is like, going right into this lecture. Krishna sometimes pretended to be sick, and many physicians came. They could not cure him. Headache. He had a headache. So Krishna suggested that, I think if my devotee gives their dust of foot on my head, then I'll be cured. End quote. Then every devotee was approached that, give your dust of feet. Krishna wants it. Even Narada. So Narada said, how it is possible I shall give my dust of feet to Krishna? No, it is not possible. Now, even Narada's like really high up there, he's one of the Mahajans, he's like super elevated, okay? But Narada Muni said, says, but when the messenger approached the gopis in Vrindavan, and they were informed that Krishna is sick, so he wanted the dust of feet of the devotee to be applied on his head. Nobody gave it. Nobody's given it so far. So we have come last to you. Then Papa goes, so immediately, yes, take it. Immediately. So much dust was collected and Krishna was cured. So this is gopis. Others thought, if I give the dust of my feet to Krishna, I may go to hell. But the gopis thought, let us go to hell, but let Krishna be cured. See, they just wanted Krishna to be pleased. They didn't want Krishna to be pleased so they be benefited. They just wanted that Krishna's pleased. That was what was important to them. Let us go to hell, but let Krishna be cured. Therefore, the gopis are the first-class devotee. They do not care for themselves. That is recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramya kachit upasana vrajavado vargabir yakalpito. The process of worship as it was planned by the gopis in Vrindavan, there is no comparison. That is the highest devotion. That's the highest devotion, what we just heard there. Okay? And also Lord Chaitanya, he, in the Shashastakam prayers, he expressed that. He expressed that in the last of the Shashastakam prayers. He says, Asli Shiva Padaratam Panastumam Adarshanam Mamahatam Karotuva Yatatata Vavadhata Lampato Maprananatas Tusaeva Naparaha. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so. Even if he handles me roughly as in his brace and makes me brokenhearted by not being present before me, he's completely free to do anything and everything. He's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. No matter what happens to me, I'm going to keep worshiping Krishna, even if I'm miserable as a result of that. And that's what happened to the gopis. But anyway, the gopis were such great devotees of Krishna that even they were going to go to hell. It was, brought to their attention, hey, you give this dust, you might go to hell. So what? We'll go to hell as long as Krishna's headache is cured. That's great. So finishing up here, it says, here he goes. That is the highest devotion. Prabhupada goes, they did not care for themselves. They simply wanted to satisfy Krishna. When Krishna was playing flute at dead of night, all the gopis were flying to Krishna. His husband, his father, his husband, where are you going in this dead of night? Where are you going? They didn't care. Society, friendship, love, all sacrificed. Now, this is a very significant thing back at this time, 5,000 years ago, in a super conservative Vedic culture setting. You know, back then, if a girl in the nighttime left the home, disregarding the instructions of her father and her husband, forget it. You know, you're just signing up to be a social outcast practically. And this is a very high price they were prepared to pay to go be with Krishna. So it goes on, they didn't care, society, friendship, and love, all sacrificed. We shall go to Krishna. That is Krishna Bhakti. That is the highest perfection of life, to sacrifice everything for Krishna. Only Krishna should be satisfied, in quotation marks, Prabhupada goes, only Krishna should be satisfied. That is Krishna consciousness. But that is not a very easy job. But one can do, if he likes, everything for Krishna. So can anybody give me an example of that is not very easy job? Right out of the Krishna book, there's a really good example in the Krishna book of how giving everything for Krishna is not an easy job. Okay, how so? Okay, that's an example. Anybody else? Any other example?
Servants of Kamsa.
Servants of Kamsa, yeah, the servants of Kamsa. They kind of knew, but they couldn't. Another example? I'm thinking of the wives of the Brahmins. Yeah. The Jugnik Brahmins. Their wives got it, right? They were prepared to give everything to Krishna. But the husbands, who were Jugnik Brahmins, you know, they were very they couldn't. And even after they understood that, wow, our wives really got the mercy, and they couldn't do it. You know, it's not such an easy job, as Prabhupada points out here. It says here, but one can do if he likes everything for Krishna. Krishna says also, Sarvadhamam Parityajya. Gopis did not care for social, for religious, or family, nothing. Sarvadhamam Parityajya. They went. Krishna now is calling, let us go. So that's a description of the highest consciousness. You know, the highest, as Prabhupada says, the highest devotional consciousness. And so that's, something we should be aware of and aspire for. But at the same time, we shouldn't be discouraged if we're no place near that. That's the ideal standard. And, there's an expression in English, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So it's good to be aware that that's the perfectional stage, but at the same time, it's okay if we're someplace nowhere near that, because Krishna is, as I mentioned last night in the talk, Krishna is Parama Anugrahat, means supremely merciful. And wherever we're at, if we just take to the process, things will make progress, things will work. And I'm basing that on another thing I heard Prabhupada say recently in a lecture, which I read last night, but maybe not everybody was here, so I'll read it again, it's nice. So Prabhupada said, this is a lecture Prabhupada gave in Mumbai in 1971, he said, even if you have desires, not that anyabhilasita sunyam, without any desire. And he kind of digressed. He said, generally people, we go to the temple to God for fulfilling some material desires. So Shastra says that even if you have got material desires, even if you are not Shuddha Bhakta, which means a pure devotee, what to speak of Shuddha Bhakta, pure devotee, even if you are an enemy of Krishna, Prabhupada says, even if you are an enemy of Krishna, some way or other, go to Krishna. Go to the fire and you'll get warm. So the idea is that even if you're an enemy, Krishna is so merciful that even if you approach him as an enemy, you're going to get purified and you're going to get elevated. I mean, wow, that's pretty incredible, right? Even if you're an enemy, and the examples are there. Kamsa is like the prime example. Kamsa was an enemy of Krishna. He wanted to kill Krishna. Throughout his entire life, practically, he was thinking how to kill Krishna. And Kamsa got elevated to the platform of Sarupya Mukti. He didn't even just get Sayuja Mukti, merging into the impersonal. He got a personal liberation, right? Sarupya Mukti. Amazing. So anyway, it goes on here. Yeah, even if you're an enemy of Krishna's, you should go to Krishna, go to the fire, and you'll get warm. Prabhupada says, that is our propaganda. The Goswamis recommend, therefore, yena tena prakarena mana Krishna navesayat. Somehow or other, that's what that means, yena tena. Somehow or another, you just try to become Krishna conscious, then everything will be successful. Then he repeats, that is our propaganda. See? So no need to be discouraged, feel discouraged, like, oh, I'm so far from, what I just heard about the gopis. That's okay. Wherever we're at, that's okay. It's a good place. You got to start someplace and just approach Krishna, with full, wholehearted enthusiasm, and things will work out. We'll get the mercy, and we'll be elevated eventually, ultimately, and eventually to this higher, stage of pure devotional service. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any question? Yeah. Garanga Prema.
So thank you very much for the wonderful class. So you were mentioning that the gopis, in order to please Krishna, they are willing to go to hell, in order to do that. So obviously, most of us are not advanced like the gopis. So in our status of life, how can we understand that Krishna is pleased with us?
How can we understand that Krishna is pleased with us?
Yeah.
Well, if your authorities are pleased with you, then you can understand that Krishna is pleased with you. I mean, Prabhupada would make that point that, we sing every morning, Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada. If the spiritual master is pleased, then Krishna is pleased. And if the spiritual master is not pleased, then you don't know where you are in spiritual life. And Prabhupada, sort of expanded upon that at different times. He made the point that, we have a hierarchical management structure that, there's the GBCs and temple presidents. And so if your superior is pleased with, actually sometimes Prabhupada will give the example of in a factory, how do you know if the big boss is pleased with you, the owner, if your supervisor, if your foreman, or your immediate superior is pleased with you, then the top person, the owner of the whole establishment is pleased with you. So try to please your devotees that you're working with. If they're pleased with you, that's a good indication that your spiritual master and ultimately Lord Chaitanya and Krishna are pleased with you. And as far as, we're not willing to go to hell, but we should be, okay, that's a difficult thing to be willing to do, but we should be willing to perform some tapasya. Tapasya means, Sanskrit word means voluntarily accepting some inconvenience to the mind and body for the purpose of advancing in spiritual life. So, I'll speak for myself. We can't perform the tapasya of, like, say, the 6 Goswamis, who were practically not eating and not sleeping and just all day long engaged in devotional service, chanting dozens and dozens of rounds, paying obeisances to hundreds and hundreds of devotees. Wow. But, at least we could do the basic stuff. Prabhupada asked us to chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 good principles. So that's a tapasya for us. And whatever you could do beyond that, that's icing on the cake. That's good. So we have to practice performing tapasya. And as practice makes perfect, so that, as we practice it, we'll get better and better at it. But even if you could just do that, if you could chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 good principles, and you're engaged in devotional service to the best of your ability throughout the day, that's very, very good. That's like on the path going back to Godhead.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anything? Sachin Nurpur?
In the purport of the verse that we just saw, Srila Prabhupada quotes Rishabhadev, do not become a father, a guru, mother, husband, or any demigod who cannot, then it says, he cannot liberate your dependence. So sometimes we see that many devotees, they have sons, but they either didn't become devotees, they even become against, unfortunately. And some other ones, they might have a daughter, but the injunction of in other parts of the scriptures, they always mention a son. So someone who is sonless, what advice can you give to those? What advice could you give to them to
Somebody
actually
who doesn't have a son?
Yeah, let's say you are sonless, you don't have children. And if you're thinking, oh, I didn't have a son to, when I die, maybe he can offer pinda. And
Prabhupada didn't emphasize that. That was done by Lord Chaitanya. He did go to Gaya and offer pinda to his, for his father. But Prabhupada never told us that we should do that. I think the idea is that, just try to produce Krishna conscious children. If you're going to try to put a lot of effort into helping your children become devotees, and if you do that, I think you're following, and there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. You know that expression? They have that in America. There's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. So I think, at least the way I relate to this instruction of Rishabhdev is in the spirit. Basically what he's trying to say is it's a big responsibility, and if you're going to be a parent, you can try to be a good Krishna conscious parent. I don't take it as the letter of the law. Don't have children. If you're not confident that it ain't going to happen. People, when they get married, they're going to have children. So Rishabhdev is saying here, okay, you're going to be married, you're going to have children. Well, be ready, get prepared. You've got to put a lot of effort into trying to help them become devotees. Don't just have children and just be happy, be satisfied to just see them grow up any old way. No. If you're going to have children, you've got to be prepared to put a lot of effort into trying to help them become devotees. That's what I think. Archita Prabhu.
Hi, Prabhu. Thank you for a wonderful class on short notice. We had a little scheduling mishap, but anyway, the exact statement in the purport that Satyajit Noy is referring to, Prabhupada says today, don't become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. So where does that confidence come from? That confidence comes from practicing yourself. Unfortunately, we have in society at large, and even in our own society, neophyte stage, that we try to get people to do things that we're not doing, or vice versa. Or, you see what I'm saying? So the confidence as a parent comes if you're practicing. If you're practicing Krishna consciousness as given by Srila Prabhupada, and you're experiencing advancement in Krishna consciousness, then you're confident to give that not only to your offspring, but to anyone. Like you go out every day and give books to people. Because you have that confidence that if they read Prabhupada's books and follow what's stated there, that they will make progress in spiritual life and become happier and happier. So it's the same thing as being a parent. Being a parent means that confidence comes from practicing yourself. Unfortunately, we have situations again where somebody doesn't practice something, but they want somebody else to practice it. I'm not going to temple every day, but you should go. Or just the opposite. I'm smoking, but I'm telling you not to smoke. So those kind of things don't work. The parent has to be the example, and the parent has to be experiencing happiness in Krishna consciousness, then they can confidently give it to their children.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good clarification, elaboration. Anybody else? Prema, last one, and then we'll stop.
Hare Krishna. Very nice class, thank you. To get married and not have children, is it sanctioned by Vedic injunction, or you have to have children according to Varnashram system? Or if you don't, if you won't get married but you don't get children, this is not sanctioned.
Okay, it's been a while since I kind of thought about all this, but I'm a little bit rusty on my information, but I think you're supposed to be wanting to have children when you get married. That's kind of part of the purpose of, and Chanakya Pandit, there's some statement by Chanakya Pandit that if you're married, you don't have children, how's it go? Yeah. So the idea is that if you're going to get married, you should try to have children. It should be for the purpose of having children. But of course, if you can't have children, it's not like you disband the whole thing. You just continue on anyway. But that should be, especially, for a young couple, the idea is, okay, get married, have children, bring them up to be Krishna conscious. That should be, but it's not like you can't get married and be Krishna conscious. Anyway, it's best I could. Okay.
We heard that statement of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that he said that he could have 100, Krishna conscious children, he could have hundreds. So that explains everything. It's not just having children, but actually with the intention of bringing them to be liberated. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
So he himself, being a Naistika brahmachari.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we'll end there. And we'll just take any other comments afterwards. Thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Quit while I'm ahead.